Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.
I'm Ian Richards. Welcome to InFocus, a weekly program where we zoom in on what's happening within and throughout the government, your government. But the St. Kitts and Nevis Citizenship by Investment Program, or CBI, is among the oldest and the best in the Caribbean, indeed the world. However, some in the international community are growing skeptical of such programs and have insisted that reforms be made urgently to address their concerns. How has St. Kitts and Nevis responded? With us today is the head of the Citizenship by Investment Program Unit, Micheal Martin. Stay with us as we delve into your government, your business. Thanks for staying with us for InFocus, and allow me now to introduce Mr. Martin. Sir, welcome to our program.
Yeah, thank you, Ian.
And persons looking online would have just seen that you were appointed in 2022 by the Prime Minister as the head of the Citizenship by Investment Unit. Tell us a bit about your role as the head. What exactly do you do?
Well, my role as the head is to ensure that the unit is run properly. And by that, I mean we have to ensure that whatever we do is in compliance with the laws, the regulations, and all of the other protocols that have been put in place to govern the running of the unit. It's very important that we operate in a compliant manner. Very, very important. And so that's really my main role in the running of the Citizenship by Investment Unit. Of course, there are the other things that come with being the head of an operation such as the CIU, which is the Citizenship by Investment Unit. So you will hear me saying CIU as we go through. And of course, there are, the staff matters, the human resources. You have to coordinate all of that. You have to plan and ensure that everything is in order. Make sure that you have the necessary resources to effectively and efficiently run the unit. And that's, in a nutshell, what I do.
You said to ensure that the unit remains compliant. Compliant according to what standards? Is it standards set by the government or something else you're referring to?
Well, you have to be compliant with the laws that govern citizenship. And you also have to be compliant with the regulations that devolve from those laws. So that's really the main area of compliance that we have to look at. You also have things like anti-money laundering regulations, combating the financing of terrorism. So all of those areas that form part of our remit in the running of the unit.
Not sure how many persons would have known that, and that's exactly why you're here today, to help to give us a greater insight into the unit and its functions. So as it relates to that, Mr. Martin, give us an overview of the CIU. As you mentioned, of course, that would be the Citizenship by Investment Unit, and its mission essentially.
Well, our mission really is to process applications for citizenship by investment. And that processing involves a number of steps. Of course, it begins with the application coming into the unit, which we normally would call a submission. So it begins with a submission. The application comes into the unit. It is checked to make sure everything is okay. Then it goes to what we call verification. Verification ensures that the application is in order, that the applicant is eligible for granting of citizenship by investment. That's very important. At that stage, we decide whether this applicant should be in the program or not, whether the applicant actually qualifies under the regulations to be in the program. Once that is clear, the verification aspect of it, we then move on to due diligence. I'm sure you would have heard a lot about due diligence. That is perhaps the most important aspect of what we do in the unit. Due diligence is carried out by international due diligence service providers. Well, when I was on the other side of the table, I used to be a service provider, and I used to tell my clients that it is very important to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Because due diligence will find out what you ate for breakfast. We will find out everything. And so the application goes off to due diligence. We check for things like involvement in money laundering, terrorism. We check your associates and your associations. We have to do a very, very thorough check, and that is what we do to ensure that the applicants who come into the program are of the highest quality and worthy of being conferred with the honor, because it is an honor of being a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis. So that is what due diligence is all about.
Let me just back up a bit, though, in terms of the eligibility requirement. What does that look like? What are, off the top of your head, some of the basic things?
Well, some of the basic things, first you must be over the age of 18 in order to be an applicant. What you have is a main applicant, and that main applicant may also have dependents, like children, a spouse, parents. Those are the eligible dependents. Children, spouse, and parents who are 65 years and over. You must not...
Under 65 and over?
Yes. Your parents must not be below 65, the age of 65.
Specifically the parents.
The parents. Okay. And you must not be a bankrupt. You must not have a criminal record, which should be obvious, although people with criminal records do try to get into our program still. So things like that. You must not be a national security risk. So those are some of the activities that would preclude an applicant from eligibility in the program.
And if you do have that criminal record, that's where due diligence comes in. They'll find out right away.
Well, you won't even get to due diligence. If you have a criminal record, then out you go.
Right.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us now about the contribution that the CBI has made to national development generally?
Well, generally, you want me to tell you generally, you only have to look around you. CBI is everywhere. The roads you drive on, the hotels you stay in, the schools that you're educated in, the medical facilities, educational facilities, all of those things have benefited from CBI. You go over to Frigate Bay, almost everything over there is as a result of CBI. And so CBI is everywhere. It is very important to our economy and to the country, to the development of the country, and to the development of the people. So you only have to look around you and you will see CBI. I believe that in the past, perhaps we have not done a very good job of making people understand that, because people ask about, what you're doing with all this money and so forth. It's all around you. It's all around you.
Mm-hmm. And so the key responsibilities in terms of the day-to-day operations of the CIU, they're involved in those things that you mentioned earlier in terms of the eligibility. They're screened at the office, or does that go somewhere else? So how does it work essentially at the office, the staff? What are they engaged in?
Well, it's done, all of that is done at the office, the eligibility. The due diligence, of course, is done outside of the office by our international due diligence service providers. They do a very good job, by and large, of ensuring that we keep the bad actors out of our program. That is very, very important because, as you know, we operate in an international environment, and we have international partners who have concerns, and we have to ensure that we do not bring people into the program who will damage our reputation and damage the reputation of our international partners.
So could you share a bit about some of the measures and the safeguards that are in place to ensure the integrity and the security of the Citizenship by Investment program?
Well, as I said before, it generally comes down to the due diligence. That is what we depend on to ensure the integrity of the program. Of course, we also have other measures governing authorized agents. Authorized agents are persons or entities within St. Kitts and Nevis who are licensed to market our CBI program. We also have international marketing agents. They also are licensed to market the program overseas. And we have just put some new regulations in place that are aimed to ensure that integrity and safeguard the program. Things like new advertising guidelines. We don't want people out there advertising that we are selling passports, that you can get them for an amount that is not in the regulations. We don't want people out there spreading false information about the program. And so we have inserted into our regulations some new measures to deal with those kinds of eventualities. Going forward, international marketing agents also would have to be registered in St. Kitts and Nevis. That, of course, puts them under our jurisdiction and makes it easier for us to take the necessary legal action should it become, should there be a need.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mr. Martin, can you tell us about any of the notable achievements or milestones? And we appreciate that you've been on the job for less than a year as well, too. But any notable milestones or achievements that the CBI has had over the past couple of years?
Well, the St. Kitts and Nevis Citizenship by Investment Program started in 1984. It's almost 40 years old. And it's recognized as being the best of its kind, and that is notable. There are many different rankings of programs come out annually and at different periods of time, and in many of those we are ranked as number one. In fact, only recently the Financial Times ranked our program as the number one CBI program in the world. So those are some of the achievements, but we have to guard our program to ensure that we continue to receive those kinds of awards, that we continue to achieve those heights in the industry. It's very important.
And as you mentioned, the Financial Times, the ranking that St. Kitts and Nevis would have gotten for the Financial Times, it was based on 9 pillars, and we scored 4 at the top marks in 4 of those pillars. I want to discuss that more specifically, and we want to delve into that, but we're going to take a quick break at this moment, Mr. Martin, and then we'll come back and delve into that a bit more. Stay with us. InFocus will be right back. Welcome back to InFocus. We continue our discussion with the head of the Citizenship by Investment Unit, Mr. Micheal Martin. Mr. Martin, before we took the break, and persons who are looking online at this video or watching it via ZIZ television would have seen, of course, the Financial Times ranking where St. Kitts and Nevis was ranked number 1 in their index. And I mentioned earlier that there are 4 pillars that St. Kitts and Nevis ranked number 1 in. And I want for you to run through some of these pillars. And the first one would be mandatory travel residence. What does that mean?
Well, some programs require applicants to reside in the country offering the program in order to be eligible for citizenship. We do not require that at this time. And so I think that is why we ranked high on that pillar, because that is not a requirement for us.
Do you see that changing? You mentioned that this time. Do you see that changing?
Well, the program is continually evolving. We want our program to be best in class, and so we continually tweak it. We continually introduce new regulations, and while I cannot say at this time if that is going to be a requirement, it's possible. That's the most I can say about that.
So another pillar that we touched on, that was mentioned in the index that St. Kitts and Nevis ranked number 1 was ease of processing. Talk to us a bit about that, because, of course, doing business internationally, any type of business in St. Kitts and Nevis, in whatever territory, is very important to keep attracting investors.
Yes, we believe that our processing is fairly easy, rigorous, but easy. In some jurisdictions, sometimes people have to wait for years before they can get citizenship. We usually have a turnaround time of way less than that. And so, again, that is one of the areas that they looked at and came to the conclusion that we were the best in that.
What's the average turnaround time?
On average, because some applications take longer than some, but on average we aim for about 120 days. That's what we aim for.
Right, that's about 4 months.
About 4 months.
4 to 6 months.
Of course, some applications can take longer than that. Some take very long, depending on what the due diligence report may say. So that has a bearing on the turnaround time for the application.
We're also ranked #1 in due diligence, and you touched on it. But the importance of being sure to keep persons who may wish to, as you say, bad actors, I think that's the term that is used,
yes.
Keeping bad actors out of the program. That's where due diligence comes in.
Yeah, that's very, very important. We can't overstress the importance of due diligence in this business.
Is there a length of time in terms of due diligence based on what we said, and in terms of the turnaround, the average time, 120 days? I would imagine that there is no pressure on the due diligence partners, that they can go as long as they need to.
Yeah, we don't pressure them, but usually they will turn around in 30 days.
Okay, and we also rank #1 in terms of certainty of product. Explain what that means.
Well, once you become a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, once you are granted citizenship, you are a citizen for life. It's not temporary. It's not for a period of 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. You are a citizen for the rest of your life. And so there is that certainty that your citizenship will not, in normal circumstances, be revoked. Because citizenship can be revoked. You know, if it is found out that you gave false information and things like that. So, but in normal circumstances, it's for the rest of your life.
Okay. Mr. Martin, as we touched on earlier, in terms of you're here to help to share some information about the Citizenship by Investment Unit and the work that it does. So would you tell us how essentially the unit regularly, or does it regularly, engage with the public?
To be honest, I don't think that we presently engage with the public as much as we should. And perhaps that is why there are some misgivings, misconceptions about the whole question of citizenship by investment. As we overhaul the program and the unit, that is one of the areas that we intend to address by putting in place a communications unit that would get the message out. Of course, we get the message out internationally, but I think it's even more important for us to get the message out to our own people so that people can understand the importance of CBI, what it does for the country, and what it does for them. That was probably the driving force behind the offering of a CBI dividend, so that people can understand that it is their program. It is our program. It is designed to benefit all of us. And so, yes, that is a very good point, a very good question, and we are indeed going to address that.
You mentioned that there are some misgivings that could be cleared up. What are some of the top misgivings that you that is out there that persons have about the program that you would care to address right now?
Well, we addressed, we touched on it a little earlier, in that CBI involves money, lots of money, and people always have an interest, as they should. It's their money, it's the taxpayers' money, in what is done with the money. And so we believe that we have not done enough to show to the public what CBI is doing in the country. We have not done a good job of that, and we intend to put a communications unit in place that is going to address all of those things, so that people will see, there'll be visible evidence, things like billboards and so on and that sort of thing, pointing out projects that were done by CBI and so on all around the country. The program has done quite a lot. Small business development, people may not know that, but there have been small business development programs that were done through the SIDF, which was a CBI program, where small business owners were trained how to set up a business, how to run it, how to keep it running, and so on. And quite a number of them are still in business. So things like that, and people are not aware that it's CBI that did that. Mm-hmm. So when you consider that CBI contributes about 35% of the GDP, then obviously it's doing a lot to develop the country and develop the people.
And as you mentioned, in terms of the monies that are brought in, they go where?
Into the consolidated fund. Okay. Yes, that's government big pot.
Mm-hmm. And the government, so it's the government's primary responsibility to disburse the monies accordingly.
Yes,
different projects and programs, etc. Right, of course. And so you also touched on the dividend, and I want to touch on that, the importance of paying a dividend, because one of the things I've had a recent engagement with the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and he spoke to the fact that, and I don't quite remember the figure, but he mentioned that in terms of the deposits, you would appreciate that, having your financial background. The deposits that we have in the bank here in St. Kitts and Nevis is very healthy, but there is no investment that is taking place. And to my mind, the dividend is a way to help to educate the public in terms of what is involved with investments. Of course, there are some persons who would invest in local companies, TDC, National Bank, Flow, and so sometimes dividends are paid, but this really is a way to get persons more involved and have a greater appreciation for how investment climates works and understanding the dividends. Can you speak to us a bit about this?
Right. Well, perhaps it's the financial sector, the banks, the credit unions, those are the institutions that, in combination with the central bank, that need to educate people about the importance of investing. It's no point having billions of dollars sitting in banks, because, as you said, the banks are very liquid. There is no shortage of liquidity in the banks, as far as I understand. It is how to employ that liquidity to develop people and by extension, develop the country. That is very, very important. And so I believe the central bank has a role to play. We hear in metropolitan countries how they adjust interest rates and all of those kinds of things and so on. We don't hear much of that going on here. You go to a bank and you get 2% interest, but then you want a loan and they will tell you that the interest rate is 12%. Something is a bit off with that. And so I believe the central bank has a role to play when it comes to the financial services and developing a proper local investment climate so that people can build wealth and develop themselves and, by extension, the country.
And by way of the CBI dividend, one of the key points that was raised, of course, is that if the company, a normal company that you invest in, does not do well, then, of course, you should not expect a dividend. And the Prime Minister made it clear that the same case would apply here to the CBI program.
Yes, but of course, we expect the CBI program to continue to do well and hopefully be in a position to continue to pay that dividend. Of course, that is handled above my pay grade. Right. That's a matter for the Minister of Finance.
So, Martin, of course, now, as you referred to earlier, in another lifetime, you're on the other side of the CBI program, which would be a provider. Explain to us what or who a provider is and what do they do?
Well, the service provider is who I referred to earlier in the regulations as an authorized agent. So, the local service provider usually has a relationship with an agent, an overseas agent. That agent, they're usually in people have different names for it, but the investment migration business. And so they attract potential applicants that they then refer to the local service provider, the authorized agent, because you cannot come directly to the CIU. You have to go through a local service provider. And that was put in place to ensure that the local people also enjoy some of the benefits of CBI. So they would charge fees and so on and that sort of thing. So it is the local service provider who brings the applications to us. They don't come directly from an overseas agent or from an applicant. They have to come through the local service provider.
And how does one become a provider? For instance, can I wake up tomorrow and say, I want to do this?
Well, under the regulations, you have to apply. Yeah, and in some cases, depending on what business you're in, you also have to be authorized by the FSRC, the Financial Services Regulatory Commission.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And the relationship between the CIU and providers, has there been a case where persons have had to be, I don't know if the term revoked might be the right term, if there been a case where stuff like that has happened?
I think over the years they have had a few of those. Thankfully, there are not many.
Okay. So, Mr. Martin, what we're going to do is we're going to take another quick break and speak specifically to some of the projects that CBI would have been involved with. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more in Focus.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Welcome back to InFocus. We continue our discussion with Micheal Martin, the head of the Citizenship by Investment Unit. Now, Mr. Martin, we mentioned that as you look around St. Kitts and Nevis, you can see CBI essentially everywhere, in the infrastructure, in healthcare. But I want to ask specifically about any success stories or examples of individuals or projects that have benefited from the program and the contribution that they have made to the country.
Well, as I said, you can look around the country, and not just in St. Kitts, but also in Nevis, and you will see what CBI has done to develop the country. In Nevis, there are many developments, some significant, some not so significant. Developments like Nelson Spring and the Hamilton Beach Resort and Spa. Those are some examples of what has been done in Nevis. In St. Kitts, of course, there's Kittition Hill, the Ramada Resort, Marriott, Royal St. Kitts, Silver Reef, the Castle, Manor by the Sea, St. Christopher Club, Christoph Harbour, and it just goes on and on. And of course, there are roads and schools and all sorts of other services provided by the government. Because, as I said, the monies go into the consolidated fund and are disbursed into projects that the government develops for the people. So CBI is all around us. If there were no CBI, we would not be where we are today. That's a fact.
And also, as you mentioned, all of those projects that would have been successful, there are cases, I would imagine, of those that may not have been as successful.
Yes, there are some cases, and when you drive around, you can see them for yourself. And again, those are some of the issues that we are addressing, because we want to ensure that projects are completed. We don't want unfinished projects. We don't want projects that have not started, because aesthetically they are an eyesore. They are blight on the landscape, and there are lost opportunities, because if those projects are completed, then of course there are opportunities for jobs, for people to make money and develop themselves. So the Board of Governors, they are addressing that issue, because it's very important to have complete projects.
But nothing specifically that you can mention at this time. It's with the board. It's being addressed by the board.
Right.
Okay. And in terms of now policy changes that you touched on a bit earlier in terms of enhancing the effectiveness and the transparency of the program, of course, very important, as the government has pledged to be one that is transparent. Of course, you mentioned that public engagement is one area that you would like to see improved. But what else can be done to enhance the effectiveness of the program overseas, and then the transparency aspect of it here locally?
Well, one of the things that we are looking at also is the regular publication of statistics. That we believe also is very important and of great interest to our people and our international partners. So that's something that we are looking at as well.
And statistics, what essentially would that cover?
Well, things like the number of applicants, number of passports, and that sort of thing, the revenue brought in by CBI, expenses, and all of those kinds of things. It's all part of being transparent and accountable, because it's very important that something of this nature ought to be transparent. It's a program that confers citizenship on virtual strangers, people who were not born here. And so it's very important for us to inform the public of what is going on.
Mr. Martin, just ask a bit about, as we mentioned at the top, in terms of some of the countries that are skeptical about CBI programs. And it's not just St. Kitts and Nevis. Of course, there are CBI programs around the world. And, there's some who would have mentioned, and there's some that we could all mention. The EU is one that, is common. It's in the news in terms of enforcing regulations that would curb the access that persons from St. Kitts and Nevis with a passport would have. How are we addressing that issue? How are you addressing that issue as well?
Well, we are addressing that issue by trying to persuade our international partners that we understand their concerns. When you turn on your TV, say on BBC, Al Jazeera, almost every day what you're seeing is these migrants in boats going across the Mediterranean. A lot of times the boats sink. 500 people may lose their lives. It's a problem. And it's a concern for the European Union. It's a concern for the United Kingdom. Now, in the past, there might have been a more adversarial response from jurisdictions that offer CBI. What our new administration is saying to the EU and to the UK, and what we are saying, because we have regular meetings. In fact, I had a visitor from the US Embassy just this morning. And what we are saying to them is that we are not going to be engaging in an adversarial relationship with you. We are going to seek collaboration and cooperation. We believe that it is better to win friends and influence people than to fight losing battles. There's nothing to be gained from fighting the EU and fighting the UK and the US and Canada and whoever else. So that is our approach. Our approach is one of dialogue, collaboration, cooperation. And we believe that that approach is already paying off. And that is how we continue to do that. We want to hear from them as much as they want to hear from us. Because some of their concerns, they're concerns about financial crime. They're our concerns. We don't want financial criminals in our country either. So we have mutual concerns. And it is better if we talk and we understand each other's position. They understand that CBI is important to us. It's important to our economy, important to our people, important to the development of our country. They understand that. And we have assured them that we understand their concerns. And so the thing to do is to work together cooperate and let us find mutually beneficial solutions to these problems.
And quickly, Mr. Martin, we're almost out of time for the program, but I did want to touch on the COVID-19, the pandemic, how it might have impacted the industry, and where do we stand now in terms of post-pandemic, although of course there are some instances of COVID, different strains and stuff. How does that impact the program?
I can't say with any precision or accuracy, because when I joined, COVID was over. So I would suspect, however, that it must have had some effect, because people around the world were locked down. They would not have been able to go about their lives in the normal way. And it would have had some effect on the program. Thankfully, COVID is over. I hope it doesn't come back. I don't think it's going to come back. But that's really all that I can say about it.
Right, okay. But you would say that the program currently is healthy?
The program is healthy.
Right.
Very healthy.
All right. And finally, I'd want to touch on, as you mentioned, in terms of the publication possibly of statistics. Any idea, a timeline when that might be done?
Well, we are working on a lot of things right now. And I am not going to say to you that it's going to happen next week or next month, but I can assure you that on my watch it is going to happen.
How long is your watch? Is there a tenure attached to the post?
It's a 5-year contract.
Right, okay. All right. Final comments that you'd like to make?
Which hopefully would not be extended. I tell my staff all the time that I don't intend to be there forever. So at the end of the day, the whole idea is that I should leave that place better than I met it.
Mm-hmm.
The people should be better than I met them, so that when I am out, they can run it effectively and efficiently.
And you
I
think
don't intend to be there forever.
And you think you can accomplish all of your goals in 5 years?
I think so. I think so.
Final comments?
Well, final comments. I want to say to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis that your CBI program is up and running. It is healthy. It is being run in an efficient and effective manner. And you are going to see, going forward, a number of changes that are designed to ensure integrity, transparency, and accountability in the program. So it is your program, and I ask you to support your program and ensure that it continues to contribute to the development of yourselves and the country.
Micheal Martin, head of the Citizenship by Investment Unit, thank you so much for being with us on InFocus today.
Thank you very much.
Viewers and listeners, thank you as well for joining us. We trust that you will join us next week at the same place at the same time for another edition of InFocus. I'm Ian Richards.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.